a jolly young fellow, Pat Gregg is my name. I come from the chapeau, that village of fame, for singing and dancing and all sorts of fun. Sure, the boys from the chapeau, they can't be outdone.
The Ottawa River is legendary as a transportation route. The Algonquin people, Champlain, les voyageurs, have traveled this water highway. Draining an area the size of Belgium, the river flows some 800 miles before joining the St. Lawrence. For people like Victor Gleason and Ronnie King, 2 centuries of industry and tradition surround them. These waters have carried timber from the valley, the timber that built cities and floated navies in various parts of the world. The river continues to be an important economic route for transporting logs to the sawmills and pulp mills at Davidson, Arnprior, and Bryson along the Ottawa. It is the fall of the year, and these rivermen from the village of Chapeau prepare the season's last boom of logs to be towed downriver. For their fathers, and their fathers before, this time of year meant leaving families in pursuit of winter work in the forests. In the spring, they would return home with the harvest of timber.
A while on your patience I beg to intrude. We hired with Fitzgerald as agent for booze to go up on Black River, that's far, far away, to the old Caldwell farm to finish the hay.
Well, there was only one method, and that was walk. There was no other method. Supposing it was, I was fortunate. Well, I guess I walked maybe 24 miles, but even that, it was fortunate because all those camps you had to walk in, supposing it was 40, 50 miles, you still had to walk because there's no other method. These portagers, there's no way you could get on the wagon with them because they were loaded with produce, see? Although they would carry your turkey. Now, that's your bag of clothes or whatever you had.
But next morning we left with good wishes and smiles. From there to the Caldwell was 46 miles. North over the mountain, Bob showed us the route. And when we got there, we were nearly played out.
Farms, like the old Caldwell, supplied food for the men and hay for the horses. Teams and wagons by the hundreds traveled in procession, hauling supplies to the upper limits and tributaries of the Ottawa, like the Black, the Coulange, the Madawaska rivers. Reaching here, the men set up camp. Through the months ahead, wives and sweethearts would write, but the only warmth would come from the box stove, penguin's underwear, deer-hide mitts, and their own sense of humor. Voracious appetites had to be satisfied. The better cooks attracted the better men. For some, it meant troubles left behind. For others, it was the only work available. But many went because they liked the life. Their forest home was called a shanty, and they were the Shantymen. At the turn of the century during winter, over 60% of the male workforce in Canada was employed in one facet or another of the forest industry. In villages up and down the valley, like Chapeau, the women were left with the responsibility of raising children, schooling, and keeping the home fires burning through months of loneliness and isolation. They were the unsung heroes. The agents and jobbers for the lumbering companies would hire the men and their teams at the village fall fairs. The names listed on the payroll spoke of family origins from faraway places: Bobrovsky, McParland, Pupor, Sullivan, names preserved in song.
Welcome all you pine fellers, wherever you be. Come sit down a while and listen to me. The truth I will tell you, I make no mistakes, of felling the pine up at Little Long Lake. And as dum-diddle-a-dee-dum-diddle-I-do. There's the big Hunter Blacks and the Cassidy Greys, and a fine team of hollers belonging to Hayes. The team of LaBelle to the bays of O'Brien, and a team of McCools on the Portageon line. And it's dum-diddle-a-dee-dum-diddle-I-do. There's the Sullivan brothers and Jimmy Perdue, and old Moe Shapiro and Fiddlin' Pat too. Best bunch of pine fellers that ever was seen. And we cut for Hawkesbury in the township of Sheen. And there's dum-diddle-a-dee, dum-diddle-I-do.
Back in Sheen, the family of J.R. Brennan maintains the tradition of the days when horses championed over machinery. Days when the timber limits of the lumber barons, Gillies, McLaughlin, Booth, rang out with the sound of axes and saws hurling down the pine. The Shantymen had their own vocabulary, only some of it repeatable. There was the job of the chickadee, the groundhog, the buck beaver, and the bull cook.
Come all you jolly fellows, and I hope you'll take it cool. I'll tell you of a winter I spent working for Joe McCool. He was the damn fine foreman, the truth to you I'll tell. As far as judging loads and roads, there's few he can't excel.
The lumbermen adapted the crosscut saw in the 1870s so that two men at a saw could fell twice the timber of two axemen. Starting work before the sun cut through the treetops, each gang had 100 logs a day to get out.
Well, the skidding and hauling, the skidding you didn't need the frost for the skidding. The skidding, you see, you followed the log makers. There was most of that time either 5 or 6 man gang. The two loggers, they went ahead and felled the trees, and then we had 1 or 2 trail cutters, most of the time just the one, and the teamster who skidded them, and the man at the skidway that rolled them up. You know, as they fell them, this trail cutter, or swamp, or whatever you like to call him, he made trails first to the logs and moved all the brush, so we'd have a good clear trail, and then we'd skid them out to the skidway and the roller, he'd put them up. Now, sometimes if the logs was big, we used the line, and the horse drew the logs up.
Oh, you want short, eh? Okay.
We started to sleigh haul on Monday morning and 5 the standard time. He sent me out with a Polish gang, we loaded with the line. Lucy Couvret was sent to tail, he sent the 2 first load. Pat Masterson was chickadee, walked up and down the road. And then comes Christy Tallon, he drove a span of greys. He was one of the best tipsters McCool had on the sleighs. He was followed by young McLaren, Hal Kennedy just as well, till they put a 4th team in the gang, were drove by Stevie Bell.
Teeing up at the skidway meant a chance to swap stories and mix with other gangs.
You see, to the same teamster to each gang. You see, like up in McCool's here, I guess at Willie's camp, maybe he had 20 gang, eh? Yeah, everybody worked together and everybody was pleased to get a big day then. There generally was a small team around camp that used to bring the chuck out hot on the sleighs. Sunday was your day off, so you either washed or wrote letters home, but you still had to look after your horses. You done your wash and stepped down and sung.
We are a big family, we dance and we sing. We live just as happy as an emperor or king. We're 7 fine fiddlers and none of us drones. And Michael, my brother, can rattle the bones.
You were there for one reason, because you needed the money, and were glad to get it.
Oh, I worked for McCool first. I worked in the cookery, 6 months, 120 men, 1 cook and 2 cookies, $26 a month. Paid me 30, but I took the run. We went in the first day of November. The first year I went in the cookery, and we come out the 8th day of May. We went down over the mountain here brought the horses down to the farm. I was 6 months and 8 days, and I'd earned, they paid me $40 the last 2 months I was there, and they paid me 30 for the first 4. And 8 days in May, I earned $208. Never missed a day's work from I left home till I got back. See, every company had to stamp their logs, eh? So they can be seen in the water, see? And this was just a job the lads didn't like very well, because your day's work was done, and then you had to go and stamp on your logs. But you didn't get any extra money for it. You had to at least put 5 or 6 marks on every corner right around, so they could be seen in the water, see? No matter how your log was lying, eh? Yeah, well, every company used to have a mark for their logs, eh? But Booths didn't have one at this time, they said, eh? So they were walking along the shore one day, and they saw a turtle on their logs at the river, eh? So Mrs. Booth is supposed to have said to her husband, that would be a nice mark for her logs, a turtle, eh? So some of the guys, when they were making that turtle, they got in a hurry, eh? And they didn't leave no tail or head on it, eh? So the foreman said something to the guy about not making it right. Said there's no head or no tail on it. And it seems it was a very stormy day, eh? So the guy said to the foreman, he said, you wouldn't expect the turtle to have his head and tail out a day like today, would you?
And now to conclude and finish, and I hope there's no one mad to hear about McCool's Banker, the people should be glad. So get your work done early when the weather it turns cool. We'll shoulder our pack sack, then we'll go back for McCool. We made that, we composed that on one Saturday night.
The first spring freshet was what every operator sought for his logs. The faster and higher the water, the better. For getting the lumber to market meant payday.
Well, we're coming around to the time of year when the lad would step out of the shanty in the morning and he could feel her in the air, you know, that pretty soon the old ice was going to go thump and she'd crack. And the foreman would come around and say, well, you lads get ready to break that dam and we'll let her go in the morning. Once they started downriver, those fellas had to herd them just like the western cowboys herded a herd of cattle. And they kept them off the shore, and wherever they didn't have glance booms, the logs would get into these little side bays, and then that meant they had to go in and clean them out. And that wasn't, you know, a job that they relished too much because they'd have to get into that cold water. A lot of these fellas who worked in the drive, you know, they were valley lads who went up, farmers, and the lads from Glengarry come up and went up. But there were a lot of French lads from the Gaspé, too. And when they come down in the big pointer boats, you know, when they were working along the shore and with the peavies and their pike poles, one of their favorite songs was, En roulant, ma boule roulant, en roulant, ma boule. Trois beaux canards s'en vont venant, roulis, roulant, ma boule roulant, en roulant, ma boule roulant, en roulant, ma boule.
Keeping the logs moving through the frigid waters was a job where you worked in wet clothes and slept under the stars. To get in a jam where logs piled up spelled danger. Someone would have to go out and free up a key log. Many never returned.
Oh, come all you true-born shanty boys, wherever you may be. I hope you'll pay attention and listen unto me. Concerning a brave shanty boy, so manly and so brave. It was on the jam on Derry's rocks he met his watery grave.
There was always a poet along there to make a song up about how a jam was broken or how fellas died and how they were buried. And they used to simply pick them up, they'd roll them in a blanket, bury them in the sand, and the poplar tree was soft, and they'd cut it and make a cross out of it and hang their KIRCK boots on that to mark the grave there in the sand. There were many, many of those graves down the Ottawa River.
They hadn't rolled off many logs when they heard this clear voice say, I will have you boys be on your guard, this jam will soon give way. Those words were scarcely spoken when the jam did break and go, and carried off our 6 brave boys and the foreman, young Monroe.
The year after Confederation, lumber operators on the Ottawa River organized the Upper Ottawa Improvement Company. The ICO was formed as a joint charter to make safe and clear the highway through the sorting and towing of stranded and drifted timber. Today, the job is much like it was back then. Lassoed into booms, these logs are ready for the last haul this season. It has been said that there are as many stories of the lumbering days as there have been trees that have floated downriver. Echoing still in the valley are the stories and songs that were shared when the Shantymen came home in another season, another time.
Now, when the fellas were finished the drive, they just leave there and they just head for the town. And they intended to have a blowout, and they had a dandy.
And now, you pine fellers, adieu to you all, for Christmas is coming, I'm off to Smith Falls, and when I get there, I'm bound for a spree, for when I've got money, the devil's in me, and it's dum-diddle-a-dee, dum-diddle-I-do.
When they come off their spring drive, they'd come into our place in the bar, and some of the lads would come over to my mother and I'd say, here's my winter's pay. Now, I'm going to take $10 out of that. And when I come back and I want more, and I will, don't give it to me.
Now I'll buy me some poaching and a washtub of beer. I'll have me a scrubbing, the first one this year. I'll get rid of my scooters and the smell of the pine, and dance with the honeys and blow me last dime. And it's dum-diddle-a-dee, dum-diddle-I-do.
When the drive it is over, I hope 'twill be soon. We expect to be down by the last week in June. If God spares our lives to go home in the spring, we'll make that old hall in the chapeau to ring. So now I'll conclude and I'll finish my song, for I really believe I have kept you too long. The cook's getting sleepy, he's nodding his head, so we'll all say our prayers, boys, and roll into bed.